I'm your host, Nicole Joyce, and welcome back to another episode of the UC San Diego RA Training Program podcast, where we talk about and explore topics relating to research administration. In today's episode, we sit down with equipment and asset management to discuss the different ways of managing equipment and assets that come into the university, and how these differences affect your job as a research administrator and how these pieces of equipment support the research enterprise here at UC San Diego. So tell me a little bit about equipment and asset management here at UC San Diego.
The equipment management office and equipment management in general, asset management, property management, that are all synonymous, is responsible for the accountability and control of capital assets, which is inventorial equipment acquired over $5,000 that is movable, standalone, tangible, that is in our care and custody, which could mean we acquired it through money supplied by a grant or contract, usually the federal government, or we have our unrestricted funds, a gift, a loan, etc. We in our office are the central system that tracks the equipment. We own that system supported by a third-party vendor, and we do the training for compliance. So we're really about compliance through education. We manage the inventory cycle and support the campus with that effort, which is massive because we're managing 28,000 plus pieces of equipment valued at over $1 billion. And it's all over the world and in the sea and on campus, which we have more than 700 buildings that this equipment could reside in. And we're also trying to track a movable target, and that's extremely challenging. We came on board with this new inventory tracking system that is web-based, usable from any mobile device, in 2010. Since then, we've tried to capture the inventory through a physical inventory. You're required by law, federal rules and regulations, to complete that physical inventory every 2 years. And it has taken 3 cycles, and we just now have a confident baseline of our physical inventory. So we are at 100% physically verified, accounted for, and that's not without loss, because it's natural for equipment to get lost. It happens. But there was such a disconnect from that physical inventory up until 2010 that you had the potential for that risk of loss because it wasn't being managed. And now we are supporting the campus to help them manage their inventory because we are obligated, based on the financials and the requirements by law to manage money, we have to better track the equipment. And we, with the cooperation of the campus, we've done it. We're really excited about that.
So when you say physical inventory, do you mean actually physically walking around and tracking each piece of equipment?
That is correct. Every piece of equipment has been touched or verified via a picture at a distance or a subsystem that can ping it. We physically have verified each piece of equipment on this campus. We don't just say, June 30th, send us your certification letter that you've verified all this equipment. It takes 18 months to do that, to complete that effort. And with being consistent now and with clear expectations and the support from our office, we are now successful. And that success was initially just one person, me. And I was the face of CAMS launching the application. I was the project manager. And then you look at Stanford, they have 19 people in equipment management, and you have one person. And what I'm thrilled about is now we have 2 additional full-time staff. So I'm growing the unit, and that's based out from the need to provide quality service to the campus. And if you're going to hold them accountable, we have to be accountable. And we can't be accountable with one person and expect to be compliant, because at the end of the day, it is all about audit and not having an audit finding.
So obviously, we do a lot of research here at the university, and it's big business for us. How does equipment relate to sponsored research?
We are basically Research One. I mean, this is a huge revenue generator, if you will. If you're talking in a business sense, that is substantial revenue for the university. We're talking over $600 million comes in on a year on federal grants. We rank in the top 10. I think we're at 5 or 6 right now of being the recipient of federal funds. And if you are going to stay in that top 10 and be a Research One, you have to have respect for that industry, which is part of the university. So we relate to them based on mutual respect in the sense that we realize that their research is their priority. Business administration is not at the top of their operational thinking, but it still exists. So they have, through their funding, they're able to support a business unit, and they need to rely on that business unit to manage the business administration and operations, which we fall under that financial control. And I mean we by equipment management. And this is a service that we need to have for the campus and be that service. Even though we're pushing down from a central to a decentralized environment, really. We have a central system, we have a central offices, but we're very decentralized at the same time. This is an interesting juggling act, and it's a balancing act, and I'll get to that a little bit later. It's about providing a service that can account for by sound control or through sound controls to prevent audit so that they can continue receiving funding. We look at our role as the service to them to keep them compliant in order to sustain our funding. Because if we are out of compliance, we have to publicly announce that, and funding is at risk. Because why would you, as NSF, decide to give $2 million to UCSD if they cannot manage their inventory? Because the majority of things that they're doing with that money is buying the equipment. And that equipment is critical to the success of their research. They can't operate their research without equipment. So this is a partnership, and we have worked really hard in our inventory campaign to establish the relationships directly with the PI and with their support staff. But when we can have FaceTime with the PI and give them the intelligent delivery of our objective, they appreciate it.
When I think of equipment, I think of large pieces of machinery that you can just go out and buy and plug in and use. What are some other things that we might not initially think about when dealing with equipment?
Great question. And we have a variety of equipment from ships, research vessels. We have the flip. We have nano engineering of chips the size of your pinky fingernail that we have to track, and everything in between. When you have different types of labs from marine biology to biology here to chemistry to physics to structural engineering, it's incredibly broad, and you can't get everything off the shelf. And we acquire equipment from gifts, which go through the gift office. We get loans, which have to have a contract, and there's restrictions on gifts as well. So that whole contract management, from the grants to the gifts to the loans to the contracts to any other agreement to furnished property from the federal government. They give us equipment as well. Basically, it's borrowing it. So they own it, but it's in our care and custody. So we have those obligations to track it as well. We have the bubble building. It's the magnetic research building. It's over in Muir, and it's actually going to be taken down here soon, but that's a piece of inventory equipment because it's movable. And so it can look like a building, and it might be bolted to the ground, but it's still movable. We have MRI machines, and we build equipment to deliver on the grant, the terms and conditions. It may be a deliverable. We don't track those items, and that's when you start to get into the fabrications. And fabrications defined by UC is that we build it in-house, meaning the department has to be constructing that piece of equipment. And those pieces of equipment, we have many of those, thousands of fabrications in progress, valued at over $58 million right now. And that's a huge responsibility because you're dealing with a lot of parts. That's where things get very complicated. I am extremely proud to let you know that we have hired a full-time person to help us manage fabrications. That's how important it is to business and financial services to provide quality service. And those resources don't come easy. You have to show the value and the need. And in support of that, we need to have in our office effective processes, lean processes that can track the financials of building that piece of equipment, because the department is responsible for every nut and bolt. Because at the end of the day, when they submit a fab request, we're saying they're going to build this table that we see in here with all these computer parts to it and the monitor, and that's going to be one piece of equipment. They have to account for all the money spent on that. And at the end of the day, it's one piece of equipment. And that's when it becomes inventorial and we start to track it.
Tell me a little bit more about the Campus Asset Management System, CAMS.
Yes. So the system, which is, we call it the system of record, is an asset management system. It's a tracking system and tries to be a little bit of a financial system. So we have to track the cost, the actual cost of the equipment, or the total cost of the equipment within that same tracking system. So you have an asset record that has accounting information, has location information, has the financials, the award document or the sponsor number, etc. So all those details are in this asset system, which we call at UCSD the Campus Asset Management System, CAMS. That is a third-party supported web-based application. UCLA uses the same vendor, and it's important to have training and understand the fundamentals of equipment management at UC. I teach a class here at UCSD through UC Learning about those basics of asset management at UCSD. The importance of the basics is if you have an understanding of asset management as an industry and a financial control, you can navigate the system a lot better. Sure, it's basically just data in fields, data elements about where the inventory is in what building, what's the name of it, who owns it, what's the UCID number. But there are elements in there that, like a class code, or what's useful life, what's the funding source, what are our building numbers, their CAN numbers. There's details that aren't intuitive.
You talk a little bit about what happens when you can't just go out and buy a piece of equipment. So tell me a little bit more about when we are building a piece of equipment and all of the supplies and materials that might go into it, and how that can get a little bit gray.
That's a really great question. And first and foremost, if anybody has any question regarding equipment management, I don't care how simple it seems, they should contact us. And we care a lot about that, because when they're reaching out to us, we know they're wanting to do the right thing. The right thing in managing all those parts to the fabrication, the key to that is the account code used when you're acquiring all the materials, supplies, nuts and bolts, equipment. The second thing is it can't just be simple assembly. It's not just plugging the cord into the wall. The account code is critical, and you cannot use this particular account code, which is in the financial string, right? You have the index, the fund, the org, the account code. So this all begins at the requisition. And that account code that's unique for fabrications, 649061 or 649061 and 615, you can't get those approved for acquisition unless you have a fab number. So their first step is to submit the fab request to us, which is going to include, we may question the design. Exactly are you building? What is the purpose? And 99% of those get approved as fabrications. And then you get your fab number that you would always want to reference on any type of acquisition, because when you use that account code, you can't move forward unless you have that fab number. And those are what's called key controls. Throughout asset management and many other business operations and accounting rules and managing money, the key controls along the way of the process are critical to the success of that and the ease of the process. The second thing is the communication. With Patrick being hired, we are going to have clear processes drafted, easy to read, use innovative ways to meet the different learners that we have on campus. If they're a PI, we're going to address them maybe a little bit differently than a business officer, because we're talking about their research and we want to get to them very quickly. And here's the nitty gritty, 1, 2, 3. Maybe there's more detail when we're talking to the MSO and the fund managers. And then we want to have that communication with the contract officers. Our relationship is a huge web with all the different entities on campus. It takes all of us just sometimes to manage one piece of equipment. Simple, get a fab request, get the fab number, make sure you reference that fab number, use the correct account codes, and let us know when you're done.
What happens if someone takes a piece of equipment and then they modify it?
Yeah, the other piece in the fabrication, if you are going to add an accessory or upgrade it or enhance it or extend its useful life, it all depends. And that is the magic term. That's why we need people to call our office and get these questions answered and clarified. Because they may have sound logic, but it may not be the logic of accounting. And that's where we run into a little bit of conflict. And we have to manage based on strict accounting rules, audit rules, A133, uniform guidance, GASB, GAAP, all these requirements to manage the money and account for it. If they need to enhance it, which is usually an accessory, an upgrade, or an improvement, that total cost has to be over $5,000 if it's one unit. And that's set by UCOP. It's interesting to me because $3,000 is a lot of money. And if you don't reference it as an accessory, you're going to pay the overhead on that. And that's where the challenge is when we're trying to get the money from our sponsors. If you have the need to upgrade equipment and that upgrade is unique and will have a cost over $5,000 when it's said and done because it's custom for the research they need to build it, that's a legitimate fab. There are so many scenarios. I can't go over each and every one. And this is probably the most sensitive areas because we have very complex research going on and they need to build custom equipment.
What are some of the most interesting pieces of equipment at UC San Diego?
Great. And I guess in terms of equipment and the research that we're doing here, what's some of the coolest stuff that you've seen?
Well, the flip is definitely one of the coolest pieces of equipment that we have. And if you're not aware of the flip, the research vessel that is shaped like a Louisville baseball bat and gets filled up with water and rotates, and the whole design, that's pretty amazing.
What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I just appreciate the relationships that I've had the opportunity to build on campus. And I really feel that we have a great partnership with our stakeholders on campus and we care a lot. And we invite them to call us. We'll come to them if they want training. We know that inventory is a necessary nuisance, and we are advancing our system of record to be as innovative and mobile and in real time as possible. And their feedback really does matter to me. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us today for the UC San Diego RA Training Program podcast. We'd also like to thank Jamie Wheat for sitting down to speak with us, and as always, our invaluable training assistant Francisco Mejia for his production and editing expertise. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can visit our website trainra.ucsd.edu, where you can find links to our social media, sign up for our listserv, and get more information about the program.